Hi art folks, it's Sade and today I have another pigment spotlight video for you. Today we're going to talk about indigo. Indigo's pigment number is NB1. You might notice that that's different than the normal PB. That's because this is the genuine version of indigo that we're talking about here, which comes from a natural source, a plant. And as one of the oldest and most important natural blues in history, it gets that elusive NB1 number. So here I'm talking about genuine indigo, which is a deep, dark, inky, moody, slightly desaturated blue color. The example I have here is from Case for Making, which is one of my very favorite versions of indigo ever. So, because we're talking about a natural color and we are talking about a non-light fast color, I wanted to show you a bunch of different versions of genuine indigo and some related colors. As you see me swatching the genuine indigos in this first group here, you'll probably notice that there is a pretty big variation. Indigo can be made from lots of different plants. There is Japanese indigo, American indigo or anil. There is true indigo, which comes from India. There is woad, which is the indigo that was used predominantly in Europe. So that's a lot of different types of indigo. Most likely, if you get a genuine indigo paint, it's going to be indigo from India because that is one of the largest manufacturers of indigo these days. In this set here, I'm lucky to have at the very least 3 different types of indigo. The Earth Mineral Arts version of indigo is using the anil, which is indigo native to the Americas, which is a pretty cool and more rare version to see. And I also have a version from MCM Arts, which is woad, which was the indigo used by Europeans and particularly also used by pre-Roman British people to paint themselves. While there's a variation, you can overall see that it is just like, while there's variation, you can overall see that it is a very dark, deep color. The Case for Making version and the Stoneworks Mill version are both almost black in mass tone, which is kind of crazy. Next, I wanted to show you Maya Blue. Why am I showing you Maya Blue when we're talking about indigo? That's because Maya Blue is actually a pigment that is created from a combination between indigo and fine white clay. Historically, it's supposed to be a really bright cyan teal color, kind of turquoise. None of these examples look exactly like what I see in historical versions, but the Quartz Creations is the closest, and it actually re-wets really well and is really pigmented. I really love this version. The Rivervale Arts version is much more close to just a regular genuine indigo paint. If you were looking for something slightly similar, I thought that Vivianite is a good example of a single pigment substitution. It's not as deep as indigo and it has much more granulation, but it gives you a sort of similar desaturated blue feeling, particularly the version by Lim Colors, which is the most granulating and the deepest, and it is also my favorite. The granulation in that is out of its world. A color that is almost exactly the same in hue to Vivianite is Kyanite, and the biggest difference here is that this one is also sparkly. Before I had any examples of genuine indigo, I thought indanthrone was a pretty good substitute for indigo, and I'm going to have to say it's not. It seems to look similar to many different brands' multi-pigment mixtures of indigo, but this color is way too saturated to be substituted for genuine indigo. The version that I have in my palette is from Winsor & Newton, and as you can see, it is the deepest of all of these versions of indanthrone, but it is still a bit too saturated. Indanthrone, however, is a really great base for if you're trying to mix your own light fast indigo substitute. If you're going to try to have a light fast substitute for indigo, I would probably either suggest a synthetic indigo, which unfortunately I haven't tried, or Payne's Gray. These Payne's Gray mixes are really close to the hue and value of genuine indigo. Unfortunately, a lot of them are using phthalo blue, so that makes them a lot more staining than genuine indigo tends to be. But they have that same kind of moody, inky quality, or at least some of it. There's something about the way that indigo moves in water that seems to be not exactly something that could be matched by other colors. And finally, I just wanted to show some multi-pigment mixes that are kind of similar to genuine indigo, or similar to what you might think of when you think of indigo. I think a pretty good match is Aloha Storm, which is actually supposed to be a sort of Payne's Gray mixture. And I really like how the pigment separates when you put it in water, but that's not really what a genuine indigo would do, but it is really pretty color. So I decided to try mixing up some indigo-like colors for myself using indanthrone as the base. Basically, you can do this with indanthrone in any sort of brownish orange color. I found that if you want to get a more greenish indigo, adding a little bit of perylene green is a really great way to go about it. And of these three, my favorite mixture I think is indanthrone and P065. It becomes really nice and deep and inky. I also did some mixes that are similar to what you see in conventional brands when they have a pre-made mix called indigo. So I have PB15 and PBK6, and that's okay. PB60 plus PBK6 looks nicer to me and closer to genuine indigo. But my favorite of these is PB15 and PB60 plus PBK6 if you're going to do a black version, because this one seems to have a little more saturation. Indigo isn't quite as dead as some of the versions that I've seen. As usual, I wanted to show you mixing indigo with warm and cool versions of each of the primary colors. So you're able to get a surprising range of greens with warm and cool yellow. With a warm red, you basically just go straight into brown. and then right into black, really deep, dark black. So that could be really useful mixing pair. I was shocked at just how beautiful the purples are with PR 122. They can be so vibrant and then get so deep, dark, and lush. I absolutely love this whole line of purples. With PB29, you're basically just getting a darker ultramarine. This is really cool when you mix it with phthalo turquoise. The phthalo turquoise gets darker, but it doesn't immediately lose all of its saturation, so that's really fun and useful. I really love using indigo with Venetian red and yellow ochre, so I wanted to show you a little bit of what you can do with that. This is going to give you a really earthy traditional palette, just kind of almost smoky, misty feeling with everything slightly desaturated. And especially the contrast between the indigo and the Venetian red is really beautiful. You can get a range of natural greens mixing it with yellow ochre. And making a color wheel, I decided to show you a really historic palette here. I'm mixing it with the other two really important historic plant-based dyes that would have been used all across Europe and many different cultures. So we have Steel de Gruyne, which is made from buckthorn berries, just like sap green. Actually, if you're interested in color history, I have been making posts about this on my Patreon. So I have a post talking about buckthorn, Steel de Gruyne, and sap green, and I'll also have one all about indigo, which is a lot because indigo is crazy. I have the Steel de Gruyne from Neil Calori, which is a really beautiful example of Steel de Gruyne, and I also have this Rose Madder Genuine from Winsor & Newton, using their particular rose madder creation process. And you can see that it creates this really bright, beautiful, gentle palette, transparent, and unfortunately, extremely highly fugitive. But this is really fun just for learning about history. If you want to match these colors by making up your own mixes to try to make a historical palette, or just playing around in your sketchbook. So I decided to do two different paintings to show off indigo. I love indigo for anything like moody, and one of the things I think about is stormy skies. So I used that same first triad that I talked about with indigo and yellow ochre and Venetian red to just create a really fast, wet and wet abstract landscape. First, I just put down a really diluted version of the indigo. Then I got a little more intense and started putting in the clouds, and finally I put in a really deep version of the clouds. Then on the bottom, I used the Venetian red to put in the land, mixed that a little bit with the indigo to get deeper color, and put that in to get some shadows. And finally, I mixed in indigo with yellow ochre to get this green color to make it look like we have some vegetation. And really quickly, you have this landscape that goes together really well and is full of drama. Because it has a really wide tonal range, indigo is also a perfect color for doing monochromatic studies. And I think of indigo as a kind of sumptuous color, and I think of magnolias as a really sumptuous flower. That's a weird description, I guess, but here we are. So I wanted to paint a magnolia flower. And as you can see, you can build it up from these whisper light colors all the way to almost black dark. And it's just so fun and relaxing to make a painting this way. And you end up with this really delicate, clean result. And you can tweak it forever if you want to. Oh, and by the way, if you get a genuine indigo paint and it is stinky, that is okay. It's supposed to be stinky. Don't worry, it's not bad. I hope that you enjoyed seeing all about indigo. Like I said, if you want to learn even more about indigo, join my Patreon, and I have a super detailed post about tons of stuff about indigo. Indigo is such an interesting color, both to paint with and historically, and it's been important basically all over the world, which is so cool. And it's so cool to be able to paint with something that humans have been using for basically ever. So I hope that you enjoyed this pigment spotlight. Do you like using indigo? What version of indigo do you like using? Let me know in the comments. And thank you to my patrons for supporting me and making these videos. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this type of video and want to see more. See you guys next time. And until then, be gentle with yourself. Bye.